Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel Gridline Coaching Classes.
You know, the phone that's probably in your hand, the shirt on your back, even the power lighting up your screen, it all had to come from somewhere, right? Well, today we're going to trace that path all the way back to the source, our planet's natural resources. We're going to explore how we turn raw nature into the very stuff of our lives, and why it's so important to think of it all as a trust, not just a treasure.
Okay, let's just start here. Take a look at this. This is nature. Just being nature. A powerful waterfall, a wild forest. It's beautiful for sure, but it also just is. It exists all on its own, without any human plans or needs.
And that brings us to the single most important question we're going to tackle. At what exact moment does that water, or a tree in a forest, stop being just nature and become what we call a resource? It's a bigger question than you might think.
To get to that answer, we've got to wrap our heads around something pretty fundamental. The whole idea of a resource is actually a human invention. So let's break that down.
See, it turns out not everything out there is a resource right off the bat. For something to count, it has to check three pretty specific boxes. First, we need the technology to actually get to it. Second, it has to be economically feasible. It can't cost more to get it than it's worth. And third, it has to be culturally acceptable for us to use it. You know, think about oil that's buried miles under the ocean floor. For millennia, it was just there. It only became a resource when we actually built the tech to drill for it. And this process, this transformation, it's happening all around us, in everything we touch. I mean, even something as small and ordinary as a plastic button on your shirt, its journey started deep inside the earth, probably as crude oil, that we then found, processed, and totally transformed.
Okay, so once we realize these resources are literally everywhere, we need a way to organize them. It's kind of like opening a giant, messy treasure chest and needing a system to sort out all the different jewels and coins.
And there are basically two big ways to sort through all this treasure. We can group things by how we use them, their purpose, or we can look at something much more fundamental, whether or not nature can actually make more of it.
So let's just quickly touch on that first method. Sorting by use. It's pretty simple, really. You've got the stuff that's absolutely essential for life, like air and water. Then you've got the raw materials we use to build stuff, like wood or gold. And finally, you have the things that give us energy, like coal or sunlight, to power the whole shebang.
But honestly, it's that second method, sorting things by how they replenish, that tells us something truly profound about our planet. And that brings us to nature's incredible regenerative engine.
The key idea here is that nature isn't just a static collection of stuff. It's a living, breathing system of cycles. It has this amazing, built-in ability to heal itself, to restore, and to create new life out of old.
A forest is the perfect example of this in action. A tree falls down. But is it waste? Not at all. It decomposes, it becomes food for all sorts of organisms, and it enriches the soil. And that rich soil, in turn, allows brand new life to grow. It's a perfect closed loop with zero waste. That right there is the very definition of a renewable resource.
A perfect loop, as long as we don't interfere with it. So that leads to a pretty big and kind of scary question. What happens when we step in and break that natural cycle?
Well, the reality can be pretty shocking. On the one hand, you see a beautiful, healthy river, a classic renewable resource. But on the other, you see what happens when we dump our waste into it faster than it can possibly clean itself. We don't just pollute it, we break its ability to regenerate. We turn a source of life into a real danger.
And that leads us to the other kind of resource, the ones that don't grow back, at least not on any timescale that matters to us humans. This is where things get serious, because we're talking about our finite inheritance.
We're talking about things like coal, oil, and different minerals. These are things that took millions upon millions of years to form, and we are burning through them in what is, geologically speaking, the blink of an eye. The best way to think about it is like a one-time inheritance. Once you've spent it, it is gone, forever.
So, just how fast are we spending that inheritance? Well, here's a number that should really make you stop and think. At the rate we're currently using it, India's known coal reserves might only last another 50 years. Just 50. That's it.
And we are going to absolutely incredible lengths to get at what's left. I mean, huge, complex operations like this offshore rig, they're a perfect symbol of the massive effort it now takes to pull these last bits of our inheritance out of the earth.
Okay, so let's zoom out for a second. This inheritance we're talking about, it wasn't handed out evenly across the globe. Not even close. You could say some places won the resource lottery, while others got very different results. And this has shaped, well, pretty much everything.
Just take a look at this map of India. It's a perfect case study. You can see right away how resources like iron ore and coal are packed into just a few specific areas. Now, this isn't just some interesting fact for a geology class. It has fundamentally shaped the country. The ripple effects from this unevenness are just massive. It decides where our cities get built, it powers global trade, and it can be the reason for both incredible cooperation and, sadly, for terrible conflicts. It can even lead to this really strange thing called the natural resource curse, which is a paradox where having a ton of resources can actually make a country poorer and more unstable.
So, what do? We have these incredible renewable cycles that we have the power to break, and this finite inheritance that we're spending way too fast. Where does that leave us? Well, it brings us to our final and maybe most important role, becoming responsible stewards.
There's this really powerful quote that I think just nails the shift in thinking we need. It says, "The goal is to move toward a regenerative economy, one that operates in harmony with nature." It's about working with those natural cycles, not just constantly fighting against them.
And when you think about it, that might point to our most important resource of all, human ingenuity. The real test is whether we can use our knowledge, our creativity, and our ability to cooperate to manage these earthly treasures wisely, to make sure they provide lasting benefits for all of us, not just a quick profit for a few.
And that brings this whole big global story right back down to a very personal level. Because we are all part of this system, every single one of us. So the final question is really for you. Now that you know where everything comes from, how will you choose to use your share of Earth's treasures?